It was a tale of two halves, and it goes to the team from Tallahassee, Florida State. Dominant, assertive, sure of itself in the second half. Two teams in the first 30 that looked a bit lost, maybe a bit skittish, some early season jitters. Well, one came out of the locker room, the other one did not. Florida State outscoring LSU 31-7 in the second half, and the 7 was almost a gift there late for the Tigers. 45-24 is your final as LSU drops their fourth consecutive season opener. Let's dive right in with two of the best in the business. Chip Patterson, Barrett Sallee here to react. Guys, we were talking a little bit off air trying to figure out the lead here, what the story is. The story's written there in the final 30 minutes of this game. Give it to me here, Barrett. What do you take away from it? How did your thoughts differ from the first 30 to the second?
Well, I love the fact that they sort of played backwards, Florida State did. You know, in the first half, they were trying to come out throwing. Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman. It wasn't necessarily working. It was kind of erratic in the first half, both teams, but specifically with Florida State. And then in the second half, it was Trey Benson. It was that whole running game. I think they did a really good job of getting those safeties for LSU back, getting running holes to develop. And then at that point, it was all over because you knew what Johnny Wilson was capable of. You knew what Keon Coleman was capable of. And you knew Jordan Travis could run. So I think for Mike Norvell to come in, sort of play backwards, at first it seemed kind of crazy. And we didn't necessarily understand it. But, man, that second half, he was pushing every single button. And I think the lethargic and kind of disjointed first half was a big reason why.
Yeah, the play calling fell into a groove there for Florida State early in the second half. Chip, I don't know, from where I'm sitting, this looked like LSU had a little bit of an edge. I don't know if it was just a field goal going into the half, but then they don't come out of the locker room with that same pop that they went in with. Where was the biggest difference for you first half to second half?
Two things, and they are both on the offense. It is, number one, the fact that LSU offensive line, young a year ago, we expect them to be much better. They kind of got their lunch eaten, especially on key downs, which is the second part of this. 3 of 10 on third down. So many times Jane Daniels ends up having to run for his life. They could not establish enough of a consistent run game so that they wouldn't be facing these kinds of third and downs. Like, this is an opportunity for LSU where if they were able to impose their will at the line of scrimmage and be able to have a good run game, they would not have the kind of frustrations in the red zone, on third down, on fourth down that they had. These were game-changing moments because while Florida State on the final scoreboard is winning by a ton and deserved of this double-digit victory, talent-wise, we know that LSU is right there. They just failed to convert on the margins. That offensive line has got to step up. That offense has got to step up on key downs because the schedule is not going to get any easier as they try and pursue an SEC championship, which they can still win even after suffering this loss. But the performance, especially in the second half, does not lead me to believe that the Tigers are championship quality right now.
Well, we're taking a look at that schedule right now, and that's where I want to go, Chip, following up with you. It seems like the next opportunity to really state their claim as we go through this. Number 22, Ole Miss, we'll see what they are as the weeks pass. Number 4, Alabama, obviously circled on this schedule. Talent is one thing. Talent needing an opportunity is another. Obviously, Danny Cannell weighing in early and often. Don't worry, LSU, that schedule lightens up. Once you get to conference play, you want to face a juggernaut like that again. Keep those heads up. RDK, we know he gets his punches in when he can, Chip. But when you look at the LSU schedule, where is the opportunity, and is there enough opportunity to, I don't want to go too big picture here, but state your claim as one of those top 4 when season end comes?
It's Alabama. It's November 4th. That is all it is, because I don't think that by the time Ole Miss arrives later in the year, I don't know if that's going to be a win that's going to be able to give you that top 4 consideration. But if you go into Tuscaloosa and if you take down Nick Saban and a defense that I think is going to be one of the best in the country, if this Jane Daniels-led LSU offense is able to be better on third down, better in the red zone than it was here on this Sunday night, then yeah, you can get back into the picture. But the only path for LSU to the college football playoff and competing for a national championship is to win the SEC West, and the only path to winning the SEC West is to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Well, and they got to beat most likely Georgia in the SEC championship game as well, because if they beat Alabama, look, that's a big statement. I wasn't necessarily as high on Alabama as other people were going into that game yesterday. Afterwards, Jalen Milroe is legit. So I think, beating Alabama, they absolutely have to do that and win the SEC West. But if they lose the SEC championship game, I don't care how they lose it. There's no way they get in. You know, I don't necessarily love to sort of predict, because we don't know what the landscape of the college football playoff race will be. But I think there's going to be too much traffic ahead of LSU, a 2-loss LSU without the SEC championship. But there's still a path. I mean, I think this LSU team, look, they have a lot to build off of. And, you know, I think they kind of got put in a spin cycle against Florida State. They can get better. They can build off of that. Think about this time last year. That Florida State game could have absolutely destroyed that team. Instead, they went on to win the SEC West. So all is not lost. You win out, you're in. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And again, it's a cliche. You know, I hate using it, but it's true. A team improves most from week 1 to week 2, and now Brian Kelly has a lot on tape to work with.
Yeah, that same thought experiment on the other side could be had. Florida State, this could be the biggest feather in the cap, depending on what Clemson looks like when we do get further down the road. But let's get back to the here and now, because impressive was the effort here from Florida State, especially in the second half. I want to talk a little bit about Keon Coleman here, guys. 3 touchdowns in his debut with this team. Maybe it's a broader topic, Chip, but are you at all surprised, specific to this scenario, but also across the country, how seamlessly some of these transfer portal impacts are being had?
No, and especially not at the wide receiver position. Travis Hunter at Colorado, Keon Coleman at Florida State. Wide receiver is one of the few places where you can step in, you know your routes, you learn the playbook, you put in the work yourself, you can seamlessly fit into the offense. It's not like an offensive line, you know, it's not like a defensive line or a secondary. The wide receiver position is one of those places where in the transfer portal, you better put in everything you've got to be able to get the top talent, because that is truly instant impact in the game of football. Keon Coleman leaves Michigan State after the spring game, arrives in the summer, and immediately starts to impress his teammates. There was a story that Mike Norvell has told us in the offseason. He clearly told the broadcasters as well. They have an event at Mike Norvell's house. He shows up in sandals, and the former Michigan State basketball player also, don't forget he played for Tom Izzo, just throws down a windmill dunk in sandals. This is a freak athlete who has second-round NFL draft potential, and to throw him into a wide receiver room that we already thought was top half in the ACC is an embarrassment of riches. This is why Jordan Travis has a real shot at the Heisman Trophy, because he took an offense that we already thought was going to be good, and Keon Coleman makes it great.
Well, and Chip, you hit the nail on the head. Seamlessly fitting into an offense, it helps to have Johnny Wilson on the offense that you're joining, because like you have to double team Johnny Wilson, or at least LSU did at first, but then it opens the door for Keon Coleman to come in and do what he does. Now, moving forward, what does that mean? You can't double team both of them. If you do, then Trey Benson's going to run everywhere. So teams are now going to have to pick their poison. They're going to have to say, I don't want Keon to beat me, or I don't want Johnny to beat me. And there's no good answer for that. I mean, there really isn't. And so I think right now, because you're stepping into a situation, if you're Keon Coleman, with a Heisman caliber quarterback and a freak show wide receiver who's almost impossible to cover, it's the perfect situation. It makes Jordan Travis's job a lot easier. It makes Trey Benson's job a lot easier. And it makes that offensive line's job a lot easier. I mean, look, we go back to the first half of tonight's game. Florida State's offensive line took a little while to get in the groove, because Keon Coleman took a little while to get in the groove. Once that offense started clicking, there was no stopping it. And I think that shows just what kind of potential Florida State has moving forward.
Make no mistake about it, Jordan Travis, just as big of a part of this effort as anybody else. 380 total yards, 5 total touchdowns. We like to give flowers out when guys get something right. Who doesn't like giving out a week 1 Heisman? Barrett, you were obviously beating this drum long before Sunday night, but this had to have exceeded your expectations of what Travis could accomplish here even in week 1.
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be like this. I mean, I thought Jordan Travis would be the most important player of the game. I thought Florida State would win. I thought he would go out there and prove just how good he is, and that he deserves to be in that conversation. Maybe he's not the front runner after what Colorado did with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but this is the kind of player that I think Jordan Travis is going to be. He improved throughout last season. And then you had an entire offseason with freak show athletes all over the place. This is still a work in progress, because if you watch Jordan Travis, he still made some pretty bad mistakes, especially in the first half. So the sky is the limit for this guy. So, look, I think there are a lot of folks that in the offseason, if you're not picking one of the most traditional teams, a traditional player, whatever, oh, you're just being out there, you're going out on a limb, you're a contrarian just for the sake of being a contrarian. But Jordan Travis has everything. He has the entire recipe for Heisman success, just like Florida State has the recipe for college football playoff success.
Look, tonight was all about whether Florida State is ready for prime time, okay? You win 10 games for the first time since 2016. That's awesome. You went 0-3 against teams that were ranked at the time that you played them last season. You finished the year barely getting by Florida, barely getting by Oklahoma. Those were 500 teams. The Seminoles had a lot to prove, and they showed up here, and Jordan Travis and Florida State as a whole, they answered on every single level. Yes, it was not pretty. Yes, it was messy, but what do you expect from a Florida men and Louisiana men meeting in Orlando on a hot Labor Day weekend? It was week one. It was a little bit sloppy, but one of these teams was more mature. One of these teams was able to elevate above the environment, and Jordan Travis and the Seminoles were it. And I'm going to say, he's not him yet, but he might be him.
He might be him.
He's getting close.
We'll see if he gets to him. Expectations exceeded here in week one for the Florida State Seminoles, and a message sent to everybody on that ACC schedule. We will see Clemson. We will see Duke on Monday night. It's going to be a blast to break that one down as well. Chip, Barrett, great work as always. And the work never stops for those two. The keys, they pound. The microphones, they scream. They join us here on HQ as well. And don't forget, on the Cover 3 podcast, the final word comes in. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the premier pod in all of college football.